Hello everyone, and welcome to the Lagoon After Dark. Today I have a very special video for you, and what will be a recurring video series here on the channel. The Lagoon is a fun place. We have much to offer and entertain, and I would like to welcome you to the first retro deep dive. I wanted to start this video series off with one of my personal favorite movies from 1958, Horror of Dracula. So, get all relaxed and comfy as we take a deep dive here at the Lagoon. That's right, it's retro deep dive time. Horror of Dracula is a Gothic horror film based on Bram Stoker's 1897 novel, Dracula. The first in the series of Hammer horror films starring Christopher Lee as Count Dracula and Peter Cushing as Dr. Von Helsing. Other notable stars in this film are Michael Gough, John Van Eysen, Carol Marsh, and Melissa Stribling. In the United Kingdom, the film was simply titled Dracula, directly named after Stoker's novel. In the United States, the film was retitled Horror of Dracula. This was done to avoid confusion with the U.S. original by Universal Pictures 1931 classic Dracula starring Bela Lugosi as Count Dracula. So, to prevent confusion for American audiences, I will refer to this film as Horror of Dracula rather than its original title, Dracula. Before we make our excursion on to all the facts and details, I wanted to throw in this little vampiric fun fact. Horror of Dracula is the very first vampire movie to be shot in color, so enjoy sinking your fangs into that. Let's swim on. Hammer Film Productions is a British film production company based in London. This illustrious production company is best known for its gothic horror and fantasy sci-fi films and TV series from the mid-1950s to the 1970s. The company was founded in 1934 and soon went on to make comedies, thrillers, science fictions, and classic black and white noir films such as Maniac and Scream of Fear, to later sell out and make pirates swashbuckler adventure films such as The Pirates of Blood River and its sequel, The Devil Ship Pirates. Hammer even made a fun, loose trilogy of caveman dinosaur films such as the classic 1 Million Years BC and When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth, ending on Creatures the World Forgot. All three films are fun to watch and enjoy with popcorn and the mandatory Dino Nuggies as snacks. Enough of these fun side notes though, because Hammer Productions would later go on to dominate the horror film industry with The Curse of Frankenstein and Horror of Dracula, with all their accompanied sequels. Hammer would also give life to a great werewolf gothic horror film, Curse of the Werewolf, and a 4-film series of gothic horror mummy movies. They would also take a shot at occult horror films that were overfilled with satanic imagery, such as To the Devil a Daughter, Kiss of the Vampire, and the iconic The Devil Rides Out. Hammer Production quickly brought to the world some of the most iconic gothic horror and occult horror films that would go on to impact and inspire various filmmakers, writers, and artists for the foreseeable future. Horror of Dracula entered production on November 17, 1957 at Bray Studios with an investment of £81,000. The script was written by Jimmy Sangster that was based on Bram Stoker's novel, Dracula. It was directed by Terence Fisher, with the cinematography done by Jack Asher. This would later be known here at the Lagoon as the Hammer's Power Duo Team. Anytime Fisher and Asher worked together on a Hammer film, you knew you were in for a visual treat that would disgust as it would mesmerize you with the film's beautiful shots of forbidden woods, ornate Gothic cathedrals, occult rituals, mummies, and Gothic castles housing satanic vampires, werewolves, Satan himself, or perhaps a mad science experiment gone horribly wrong. Terence Fisher was born in 1904. Unfortunately, his father passed when he was young, but nevertheless was brought up and came from a Christian Science family. Fisher grew up on sea and left school at the age of 16, and this time he served in the Merchant Navy for 5 years. Once that was over, he got a job doing store designs and windows in various department stores. He would go to the movies and felt that he needed or rather wanted to be part of the film industry. In 1933, he finally broke into the film industry as a clapper boy at Lime Grove Studios in Shepherd's Bush. During this time, he viewed himself as the oldest art assistant clapperboy in the movie industry. He then would work his way up to the editing room and edit B-movies. The Wicked Lady is one of his credits during this time. Essentially, he was working on films that just needed to come out fast so that better American films could come into London. Fisher did serve in World War II in the Merchant Navy. It's unconfirmed if he saw combat or not, but for the purpose of this video, we will just discuss his film history rather than his history during the war. During the 40s, he was still working on film as an editor. He also had a lovely wife named Mirage. As the war ended, Mr. Fisher was then given a chance to become a director by getting projects that could test up-and-coming directors. Terence Fisher's first movie as director was A Song for Tomorrow, the second feature for Highbury Productions. Fisher then continued to make various other prestigious movies, such as The Astonished Heart, Marry Me, and Portrait from Life. His career as a filmmaker would drastically change when he started working for Hammer Productions. His early time at Hammer, he worked on the films Mantrap and Spaceways. This period of Fisher is often dubbed his journeyman director period. If you're into film noir and science fiction, then definitely check these movies out. His first major Gothic horror film with Hammer was The Curse of Frankenstein, which started Hammer's name within the Gothic horror genre. This also made British actors Peter Cushing playing Baron Victor von Frankenstein and Christopher Lee as the creature, aka Frankenstein's monster, shooting them as the horror stars of the era. Terence Fisher later went on to adapt several other classic horror films such as The Mummy, The Curse of the Werewolf, The Devil Rides Out, and Dracula, Horror of Dracula. He is the first director to bring Gothic horror alive in color. Mr. Fisher's addition of occult imagery and sexual overtones were unprecedented in his day, however they would seem tame by today's standards. During Terence Fisher's time working on the iconic Gothic horror film The Curse of Frankenstein, he would form a unique artistic creative bond with cinematographer Jack Asher. This event in horror film history shows a unique gathering of creative individuals that have a passion for art and horror. Though it's unfair not to mention Terence Fisher, who had previously been directing for 10 years. Felt that he had no affinity for horror films and Gothic horror films, but it suddenly changed his life. He basically felt that he knew what he was good at now, scaring people by making Gothic horror films. Given the Curse of Frankenstein's subject matter with its overt gore and crude sensuality, its lurid approach was dismissed and deemed awfully lewd by critics at the time, but the film was indeed a commercial success. With the success of The Curse of Frankenstein, the picture, as previously stated, being an extensive commercial success in spite of its X rating, gained in today's currency $8 million, only costing about $270,000 just to put it into perspective. So naturally, Terence and Asher would be given the chance to tackle Dracula next. Dracula, or otherwise called Horror of Dracula, went quickly into production in November 1957. Its starting budget would today be $89,223.48 in United States dollars. Another fun fact about Horror of Dracula is that Terence Fisher was not one to really storyboard. However, the great Richard Kleinsman, editor, publisher of Little Shop of Horrors magazine, said in an interview that he once looked over some of Terence Fisher's personal pages where he had handwritten out his description of every scene. Mr. Clemens later states that Mr. Fisher, assistant director John Pedrell, said, Terry would know 2 or 3 setups ahead of time, and what he wanted, he finishes one and moves on to the next. Richard Clemenson later digresses that Bell Guess had the entire film storyboarded, but Pedrell said that it's good enough that I knew the next one was coming. Terence Fisher was a unique director because he was not a demonstrative director, and he would not look through the camera nor give instructions to the camera operator. He only talked to John Pedrell, his first assistant, and explained what he wanted. He was so quiet that people thought the first assistant director superseded him in authority as director. Fisher expected the actors to have read their scripts, and some even thought that Jack Asher was really directing the film due to Terence's overt, quiet nature. Mr. Fisher just had a special creative mindset that if the actors understood their role, and if each member on set knew how to do their job, he wouldn't need to lecture them on what to do, and they should merely do their job in an orderly fashion and make a great Gothic horror film. For example, he would allow the actors to rehearse the scene and give them a few takes, then approach them and say, good here, maybe do this part differently and let's see how that goes. If it was better, then he would keep it, or discard it if the initial rehearsal was correct. Terrence would even maybe say, let's get a take where you're a tad more forceful, or even more mysterious, etc. Fisher gets wrongfully accused of not moving his camera, but he does indeed do so when he wants to elicit effect. Just a quick side note as we swim deeper down. I don't want to name any names, but Milton Sabansky most definitely never watched any of Fisher's films. Those of us that have watched his films know that he even used handheld cameras to elicit scenes of great emotion or horror. If you notice in some of Fisher's scenes that he will blur some characters in the background, and only when these said characters come into frame does the blur effects dissipate, revealing the horror. This adds to certain dread and mysticism that is often lost in our time. You accompany this with Jack Asher's individual lighting and color scheme, and you have yourself a perfect duo for horror. Sadly, Terence Fisher later died in the same span of time as Mario Bava and Alfred Hitchcock. This was a devastating blow to the horror and thriller community. However, the directors would pave the way for new horror directors that we would all come to love and know, such as Tobe Cooper, George Romero, and John Carpenter. Anthony Hines, a Hammer film producer, once said, Terry liked to call himself a working director, a somewhat to himself deprecating description. What he never said was that it was excellent work, that he directed a dozen or so films that will never be forgotten. I must say that I agree with this statement. Terence Fisher is a master of Gothic horror. Come now, and let us dive a little deeper and discuss Jack Asher and his importance to the contribution to the horror of Dracula. Jack Asher was born March 29th, 1916, and was an English cinematographer. He began his cinematic career as a camera operator. He made his debut as a cinematographer on The Magic Bow. Asher remains famous for his work at Hammer Production, working on such films as The Mummy, The Hound of Baskervilles, a Gothic horror Sherlock Holmes adaptation, The Curse of Frankenstein, The Revenge of Frankenstein, and Horror of Dracula. Jack Asher's style was characterized by fantastical use of color, such as non-realistic purples and greens. Terence Fisher once said of him, Jack Asher had a very distinct style of lighting, which was quite different from Arthur Grant's, who had a more realistic approach to the situation. Jack Asher was almost theatrical lighting with little tricks, like color slides placed over the lights and so on. Asher, other more notable non-Hammer works include Woman of Twilight, Reach for the Sky, and The Good Die Young. The last fun fact that I have for you about Jack Asher is that he was rumored to be up for an Academy Award for his contribution to cinema history as prolific master of cinematography. However, there are no documents to prove this, but this doesn't negate the fact that in 1964 he was nominated for a BAFTA for Best British Cinematography Color for his work on Hammer Productions' The Scarlet Blade. Nevertheless, Jack Asher, working with Terence Fisher on their next Gothic masterpiece, The Horror of Dracula, would take them to newer heights as Hammer's power duo team. Let's swim deeper down and discuss our stars of the film. Christopher Lee was cast as Count Dracula. Sir Christopher Frank Cardellini Lee was born on May 27, 1922, and tragically passed on June 7, 2015. Sir Lee was an English actor and singer. His career spanned more than 60 years. He is noted for his deep and commanding voice, often playing villains in horror and fantasy franchise films. In 2009, Christopher Lee was knighted for services to drama and charity. He received the BAFTA Fellowship in 2011 and the BFI Fellowship in 2013. Christopher Lee is famous for his portrayal of Count Dracula in 7 Hammer horror films. He is also known for his role as Count Dooku in 3 Star Wars films, Saruman in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and played Francisco Scaramanga in the 007 James Bond film, The Man with the Golden Gun. He even has a fun role in Tim Burton's Dark Shadows and Sleepy Hollow. Christopher Lee frequently appears opposite his friend Peter Cushing in various Hammer horror films. One quick side note before we swim on is about the great Christopher Lee. Before his acting career, Lee served in the Royal Air Force as an intelligence officer attached to the number 260 Squadron RAF during World War II as a liaison officer for the Special Operations Executive. He even corrected the director of The Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson, in a scene. It was a scene in which Christopher's character gets stabbed in the back. Peter Jackson, after the first couple of takes, said, "I need you to scream when you get stabbed, Chris." Sir Lee said, "But people don't scream when you stab them from behind. They gasp in fear and pain." Peter Jackson, knowing of Lee's time in the Special Forces, decided best not to argue and kept the scene as Christopher Lee played it. Needless to say, Sir Christopher Lee is an absolute badass. He even has a great metal band with a metal Christmas album that is fun to put on whilst you decorate the house for the holiday, if you celebrate, of course. Christopher Lee gives one of the most iconic portrayals as Dracula since Bela Lugosi. Don't hear what I'm not saying. This is no dig on John Carradine, who masterfully played the character in 1945's House of Dracula. It's just that Christopher Lee's portrayal of the Count still lives on today, inspiring various actors, writers, and horror nerds. Empire magazine's entry for Lee's portrayal of Dracula as the 7th greatest horror movie character of all time says, and I quote, "Lee's Dracula is a force of nature, red-eyed, blood dripping from fangs, often in the grip of rage. He's hypnotic, physically powerful, well-spoken, but Lee also understood, crucially, that an important layer from Bram Stoker's novel had been missing from Lugosi's performance: sexuality. Lee's Dracula is a rampant sex fiend, using that stare to make buxom ladies everywhere come over a little faint." End quote. I have to agree with the Empire on this. I digress. Both Bela Lugosi and Christopher Lee give the most iconic performances as Dracula, with an honorable mention to Duncan Rager, Monster Squad, and Sir Gary Oldman, Bram Stoker's Dracula. Christopher Lee plays Dracula as an intense, predatory, and physically imposing creature. Sir Lee, standing at 6'5", he exudes raw menace with minimal dialogue. His presence is conveyed through snarls, bloodshot eyes, and animalistic energy. He's not really a charming nobleman like Bela Lugosi, but more of a feral commanding beast. This contrasts with Bela Lugosi's hypnotic and theatrical take. Lugosi gives a slow, deliberate cadence and exotic charm. His thick Hungarian accent and piercing stare create an otherworldly, almost supernatural mystique. Bela's Dracula is a charismatic aristocrat, seducing victims with eerie grace. Lugosi's Dracula defined the character for generations, even inspiring actors and artists today. Yet, Christopher Lee's Dracula redefined the character for a modern audience, relying on raw horror that created a Gothic horror renaissance, and influenced later more savage vampires such as Anne Rice Lestat from the Vampire Chronicles, Interview with a Vampire in Queen of the Damned, and Radu from the subspecies The Bloodstone films by Full Moon Pictures. It's time now to dive even deeper, so let's swim on. Hold your breath. Peter Cushing was cast as Dr. Van Helsing. Peter Wilton Cushing was born on May 26, 1913, and tragically passed from cancer on August 11, 1994. Mr. Cushing was an English actor. His illustrious career spanned over 6 decades and included appearances in more than 100 films, as well as various television, stage, and radio roles. He is most known for his portrayal of the Baron Victor von Frankenstein and Dr. Van Helsing in Hammer horror films. He is also famous for playing Grand Moff Tarkin in Star Wars. Peter's portrayal of Van Helsing is iconic to say the least. He offers a more charming, strong action hero gusto, kind-hearted man who is knowledgeable on the occult and all the spooky things that bump in the night. Peter Cushing is intense yet composed, leaping into physical confrontations like the iconic table jump scene. Mr. Cushing's performance feels more modern and cinematic, tailored for Hammer's visceral, colorful horror. His performance differs from Edward von Sloan. Edward plays the character more reserved and has an equal knowledge of the occult, but exudes a quieter authority on the matter. Van Sloan plays him as a wise, almost stoic figure, relying on intellectual bravadas and stern warnings. His deliveries are always calm, with a theatrical stage-like cadence, fitting the early talkie area. Van Sloan Van Helsing is a traditional, iconic, almost archetypal, wise old man, steeped in Universal's Gothic black and white aesthetic. He's a mystic scientist, emphasizing superstition and folklore, with a slightly aloof demeanor that keeps him distant from others. Peter Cushing crafts a more approachable, human Van Helsing. A determined investigator, blending science and the occult with resolve. His warmth and empathy shine through, revealing his tender heart. This makes Peter's version relatable yet authoritative in its own right. A fun fact that I have for you as we swim even deeper is that Mr. Cushing took his role as Van Helsing very seriously. He studied vampire lore and even consulted with experts on folklore to make Van Helsing as authentic as possible. He eagerly wanted to have precise movements, like how he'd wield a cross or stake, to give the character a scholarly but badass edge. Peter, fencing skills from early theater work, helped him nail these dynamic fight scenes with Christopher Lee's Dracula. Speaking of Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, it would be a disservice not to mention their bromance. They soon became the closest of friends, working together on Curse of Frankenstein. This bond would only continue whilst working on Horror of Dracula. During filming, they'd be laughing and telling each other jokes to lighten the gothic mood. Lee later said that Cushing's professionalism pushed him to elevate his own performance as Dracula, making their rivalry even more electric. They even shared a love for practical effects, often geeking out over the props in the iconic Hammer blood paint recipes. Now, not to bring us all down again talking about death, but unfortunately, Peter Cushing passed away from cancer at the age of 81 on August 11, 1994, in Canterbury, United Kingdom. His legacy as Van Helsing, Grand Moff Tarkin, and Baron Frankenstein live on to this day and for the foreseeable future. Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing remain deep close friends for their entire life. Christopher Lee was quoted saying about Peter after his death that Peter Cushing was the most gentle and generous of men, and even exclaimed, "I have often said he died because he was too good for this world." Peter Cushing's career would go on to redefine Frankenstein and Van Helsing for a new generation, making his portrayal the gold standard for the sequels, remakes, and reboots to come. Well, we're almost at the bottom of the lagoon now. Should we rest our feet here at the lagoon's soggy bottom? Yes, let's rest our feet at the bottom and discuss and review Horror of Dracula. Hammer Horror of Dracula, is a visual masterpiece, an iconic classic that differs from the novel and the original film, but brings something new and fresh to the table. Let's review now the film as a whole. Horror of Dracula starts with, in my opinion, the second best Hammer horror title card. What's number one for Gills? You'll just have to wait and see, or watch the rerun of Spooky Fam's showing of The Brides of Dracula. Oh wait, I just spoiled it. Oops! This title card, with that epic gothic eagle in the background, sets the tone and vibe for this gothic horror classic. James Bernard iconic score resounds on as we see the title card say Horror of Dracula, or Dracula if you're watching the UK version. Fun fact, the major difference between the Horror of Dracula and Dracula cut is really only the title card. In some versions of Horror of Dracula, the gore effects are sadly toned down than from the regular Dracula cut. So depending on the title reel, you know which version you are watching. As the iconic epic score booms on, we pan the camera to the gates of Dracula's castle. The handheld camera then pans further into the more forbidden parts of Dracula Castle. It's gothic and ethereally beautiful with James Bernard's score blaring through the speakers. This then transitions perfectly to Dracula's coffin, proudly displaying the Count's name on the coffin. We then get that iconic hammer red paint with blood spattering on the coffin. This is to tell you this isn't your parents' 1931 Dracula. This will be a gore fest rated X for its violence and sexuality. We then cut to Jonathan Harker, who is here to be the Count's library assistant, rather than Renfield, who is here to sell Dracula home in England. This offer also differs from the novel, and where Jonathan Harker is here to sell Count Dracula, a property in London, England. I love that after the title cards and opening credits, that it cuts to a red diary that belongs to Jonathan Harker. This is very much like the novel, in which the novel is composed of various diaries, journals, telegrams, notes, and letters to various main characters, forming a cohesive nightmarish story of a vampire, Nosferatu, that is basically the devil himself, Dracula. The first half of the film follows Jonathan Harker, who is brilliantly and perfectly played by John Van Eysen. The read-over of Jonathan's reading from his diary is a perfect transition of the novel into film. I would be remiss if I didn't say that Hammer's tale greatly diverges from the novel's story. The closest film to achieve the most accurate portrayal from the novel would be the 1990 1972's Bram Stoker's Dracula. However, even this film is not 100% accurate either. I highly suggest reading the novel yourself. It will definitely terrify you and is a solidified classic in Gothic horror literature. Now, back to the Hammer film. As the first act progresses, we see that Jonathan Harker is determined to kill Dracula. In Hammer's version of the story, Jonathan already knows that he is a vampire, unlike the novel where he is just a lowly real estate agent trying to make a living to support his wife, Mina. Jonathan soon goes into this illustrious Gothic castle, and we are greeted by the brilliance of Jack Asher and Terence Fisher's vision of Dracula. The beautiful blues and Gothic ornate structures captivate still to this day. The brilliant set designs at Bray Studios never fell. Jonathan walks into the main dining hall, displaying Hammer's brilliance at depicting perfect Gothic scenery. As Jonathan and the viewers is lost in such a beautiful scenery, we are soon greeted by a note left by the Count Dracula himself. This familiar dining room scene is switched up from the novel and the original film. As Jonathan reads the note left by Dracula, we are greeted by our famous Hammer girl Valerie Gaunt. This vampiric woman is dressed in traditional Gothic attire, looking ravishingly beautiful, attempting to seduce Jonathan. She begs to be saved and assisted in escaping the castle that Dracula is keeping her prisoner. Our helpless maiden then quickly runs away in fear and shame. Jonathan, though puzzled, feels a darker presence within the room. He turns to behold Count Dracula himself standing upon the top of the stairs. Dracula in his noble cape and attire stares down upon Jonathan and elegantly yet confidently comes down to greet him. Dracula proves himself to be a generous, graceful host, having food and even a fire prepared for Jonathan. They discuss business, and Dracula leads him to his main chambers. This is one of the rare times we hear Dracula speak in Hammer horror films. Lee gives off a charming and respectful tone as Dracula apologizes for being late for their meeting. After Jonathan says he is tired, the Count offers to grant him access to his private chambers. Dracula goes so far as to carry Mr. Harker's luggage to his room. Jonathan follows Dracula up the stairs and deeper into this Gothic castle to his room. Dracula tells Mr. Harker that he is to treat his castle as his own, apologizing he won't be able to return until tomorrow night, that he can start working on documenting his library as soon as he likes. Dracula then leaves Mr. Harker to satisfy his own pleasure, but soon returns to give him a key to the entire castle. In this encounter, Dracula sees a picture of Jonathan's wife. He tells John that his fiancée, wife, is gorgeous and flaunts more kindness and hospitality upon him. Once Dracula leaves Mr. Harker to himself, it is here we learn of Jonathan's true motives to slay Dracula, the Lord of the Vampires, the devil himself. The night goes on, and Mr. Harker is resting near the fire within his private chambers. He soon wakes up and goes to investigate Dracula's castle. Mr. Harker has made his way down the main hall. He sees the dining table and the lit fire. It looks inviting, as if it's meant to tempt you to relax and lose yourself in the pleasures of eating and drinking. This is when the mysterious woman comes to seduce him, and it's revealed that she is a vampire, a bride of Dracula. As Jonathan fights her off, Dracula soon appears to give us one of the most iconic scenes in Gothic horror. Yes, as this grotesque battle ensues between Dracula and his bride, Mr. Harker looks on in fear and wonder. Dracula overcomes his bride with great strength and snarling. He picks her up and carries her off, emulating the monster carrying the beauty that became a foundational scene in horror set by the standards of Universal Pictures. As we cut back to Jonathan Harker's private chambers, we soon learn he has fallen into greater determination rather than despondency on slaying this king of the vampires. Mr. Harker prepares himself to fight off and kill Dracula, thinking upon his friend Victor von Helsing. Jonathan gets up and goes off to face off with Dracula after finishing one of his last diary entries. Mr. Harker makes his way down to the secret unholy tomb chamber of Dracula. He aims to put the beautiful woman out of her misery first. This seals his doom as it awakens Dracula. Dracula then feasts upon his blood, turning him into a vampire himself. He leaves his diary near the sanctified altar. This altar houses the statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary, the Mother of God. In this symbolic gesture of trusting God even when all hope is lost, Jonathan leaves his diary in hopes that somehow God will let Van Helsing know what happened. I want to take this time to talk about the color symbolism of blue. Blue within Hammer denotes purity, especially when it takes a lighter blue. The darker blues within Hammer usually denote a warrior of purity or a vanquisher of evil. Jonathan wears these colors to denote his allegiance to God and the forces of good, over the dark colors like red and black denoting the forces of evil and Satan. Catholic iconography, as well as occult iconography found within Kabbalistic magic, Levianism, or ceremonial magic founded by Eliseus Levi, are woven throughout Hammer horror films, especially during the late 50s, 60s period. For this was a period of another cult revival that synchronized with the sexual liberation hippie movement that was happening globally. Crowley denoted this time period as the Age of Horus, which he and his acolytes believed began in 1904. He believed concurrently that this would cause a shift in consciousness and a new spiritual era that he linked to the Age of Aquarius. Spoilers, but in the final shot of the movie, we see Dracula return to dust next to an image on the ground of the zodiac chart of the cosmos. His dust is blown away by the light of the wind, god Horus, on the symbol of Aquarius, denoting the passing of the old and preparation of the new era, or, from a Christian perspective, that God will vanquish the coming evil, the Prince of Darkness, Dracula, the symbolic Satan, the Antichrist. For Lucifer, especially in Satanism of Anton LaVey, is associated with air. LaVey calls Lucifer the Lord of the Air. In the New Testament, it refers Satan being the prince of the power of the air. So this final shot symbolically portrays Lucifer as the winds that blow the dust of evil into the world to spawn the Age of Aquarius, the Antichrist. All this Catholic and occult symbology makes sense, seeing that Bram Stoker himself was a member of the Hermetic Golden Order of the Dawn. This secret society branched off from Freemasonry in 1888, separating itself from the order to become its own distinct sect using a similar Masonic grade structure. Stoker joining this magical organization surely influenced his creative imagination that would later spawn the occult themes of God versus Satan, good versus evil, that is found within his novel of Dracula. These same themes we find also in Hammer Horror's Horror of Dracula. Peter Cushing is about to make his first grand entrance as Victor von Helsing. However, we are met with more theological imagery found within Catholicism. We cut from the previous hellish scene to see a pub whose hanging wooden sign is the keys of St. Peter, the first pope. This imagery is based on the New Testament. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 16, verse 8 through 19, Jesus is recorded saying to Peter, "And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." The camera cuts into a lively tavern that has garlic and possibly rosemary or rue hanging up as if to protect this area from evil as well as bring blessings of protection. Since ancient times, humans have had various mystical and religious beliefs about herbs having powers in the realm of the spirit. For a fun example, in Hinduism, basil is believed to embody the goddess Tulsi and is used in religious ceremonies for protections and blessing, to help ward off evil spirits and bring good fortune. Similarly, rosemary and rue are accepted for its ability to cleanse and protect from evil and curses in various folklore and religious dispositions. Rosemary and rue are often used in spells or other rituals to dispel negative energy and attract positive influence. The other famous herb that more so pertains to our movie is garlic. Garlic has anciently been associated with assisting in warding off evil spirits, misfortune, and the dreaded Nosferatu. Side note, outside of all this hocus-pocus talk, scientifically speaking, garlic will also help clear and relax your lungs if you boil it and breathe in the steam. Respiratory infections don't like garlic, and its steam will relieve symptoms. Garlic has also been proven to reduce the risk of lung cancer if you consume it raw. While there certainly needs to be more research done on the effectiveness of garlic and its claimed health benefits, one cannot deny garlic's anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties and benefits. The camera then pans to show a cozy pub-like tavern, and I implore you to notice how the joyful melody plays as we see the innkeeper wearing blue. He walks about his pub, seeing the local villagers making merry and loving one another. This pub, I feel, is symbolically the church, or where the saints, the righteous good people in town, come to have fellowship and enjoy beer. It's a bit of a stereotype within Catholicism that Catholics like to drink. Other Christian sects poke fun at Catholics for having too many feast days based on the life of Jesus, his mother Mary, and the rest of the saints and angels. These feast days are usually days of joy, with eating and drinking, and being allowed a temporary grace to break a fast if the acolyte so chooses. The feast days of St. Michael the Archangel, known as Michaelmas, usually entail drinking beer, feasting on fine meats and pies, preferably blackberry pies. Why pies made out of blackberries? Well, according to an old Irish Catholic legend, when St. Michael the Archangel casted Lucifer out of heaven, he fell to earth and landed onto a blackberry bush. Lucifer then cursed the fruit and spat on it, making it unsuitable for consumption after the feast day, which falls on September 29th. Is this fun folklore just a tale? A fun way to teach seasonal changes? As the weather cools and becomes wetter in the fall, blackberries can spoil and become less appealing. A fun imaginative tale that clearly the villagers in Transylvania would hold. Van Helsing enters this holy place of rest, weary from his travels, worrying about his friend. He is searching for his fellow vampire slayer, Jonathan Harker. As Van Helsing gets a meal and drink, he also has many inquiries about Jonathan. The righteous owner of the pub gives some resistance. Clearly, he and the rest of the town hold to religious superstitions and the belief that vampires lurk about. Van Helsing informs the man he too holds the same beliefs, hoping to be pointed to the truth of his friend's location, disclosing that he really understands what is happening within the village. Only the tavern keeper's daughter, Tiana, is brave enough to stand against her father's fears and superstitious protest. As Van Helsing is enjoying his brandy and simple meal, Tiana slips him Jonathan Harker's diary, giving a brief explanation of his inquiries. It is here that Van Helsing reads the diary and learns that Jonathan went to Dracula's castle. I may just be reading into it a bit much, but I just want to point out that it is a woman, who is also wearing blue, gives Van Helsing the truth. In this symbolic church, a woman points Van Helsing to what he is truly seeking. The testimony of Jesus' resurrection from the dead were dependent by two women. The earliest Christian texts say in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 16, 1-8, that Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, saw Jesus fully risen from the dead. In this ancient time period, women unfortunately had little to no rights, and even in court of law, their testimonies were considered half. So therefore, these women's testimony of Jesus rising from the dead would account for only one full testimony based upon the ideals of that time in higher courts. These two women would then go to tell the rest of Jesus' apostles that he returned from the dead, ultimately spawning the Christian religion. So too does Van Helsing get the good news of Jonathan's diary, a diary that teaches Van Helsing of another man who has risen from the dead and defeated death, Dracula. We then fade into a shot of Van Helsing traveling to Castle Dracula to confront a great evil and learn the truth of what has happened to his friend. Notice too how Van Helsing is also wearing a deep blue coat. As Victor goes to cross the bridge and head into the front gate, a carriage carrying a white coffin leaves as quickly as possible. Van Helsing is taken aback, but nevertheless proceeds into Dracula's castle. Victor Van Helsing explores Dracula's castle, finding it empty with signs of distress. He searches the bedroom of Jonathan and finds it in disarray. As Victor explores further, he finds Dracula's secret tomb room. Van Helsing is taken aback as he sees a very old woman with a stake in her heart, her beautiful youth a mirage from the demonic power of the vampire. Victor Van Helsing turns to find Jonathan tragically turned into a vampire. Van Helsing fights through his emotion and prepares to save Jonathan Harker's soul by staking the newly made Nosferatu. The camera fades back to hide this solemn scene as if to respect the solemn ritual that must be performed in order to save Jonathan from everlasting damnation. We soon fade into Victor Van Helsing, who is dressed dapperly. He is informing the Holmwood family about Jonathan Harker's death. Melissa Stribling plays Mina Holmwood, and Michael Gow plays Arthur Holmwood. Here we have a deviation from the novel, because Mina is not engaged to Jonathan Harker. Mina is married to Arthur in this version, just as Lucy was engaged to Jonathan. Arthur Holmwood is frustrated at Dr. Van Helsing for not elaborating more on Harker's death. Victor insists that they both read Jonathan's diary to find out more on his passing. After protests about death certificates seeming faked and Jonathan being cremated instead of buried, Victor decides it best to leave them to their grief. Michael Gow is magnificent in his portrayal of Arthur Holmwood. You can see his grief and frustration at Van Helsing in this scene. Melissa Stribling also gives a charming, innocent portrayal of Mina Holmwood, informing Arthur that they must look after Lucy now because she has recently fallen sick. It's as if Lucy has fallen into some dark spell. Carol Marsh plays Lucy Holmwood fantastically, as she cries out for Jonathan, thinking he will be home soon to embrace her and shower her in kisses and love. As Arthur and Mina try to comfort Lucy, she puts on a seductive show of sorrow. They soon leave her worried about how pale she has become. They leave Lucy to rest, and we see her smile creepily as the brilliant music from James Bernard and John Hollingworth eerily chimes on. Lucy eagerly gets out of bed to walk to the window. She eagerly, in excitement, opens the window door and turns to take off her cross. Carol Marsh plays this scene brilliantly. Her eagerness reveals lust that can no longer be contained. If she cannot have Jonathan, then she will have someone. Abandoning her morality to embrace her carnal desires, she takes her cross necklace off, hiding it in her fine jewelry box. You can tell there is a moment of realization that this action is bad, yet the eagerness for sexual pleasure and power entices her to give an evil smile. This scene perfectly shows the abandonment of Christian values of the time and the embracement of the sexual revolution that was building politically. This scene is tame compared to today's standards. It is explicitly sexual in nature. You see Lucy lock the cross away and eagerly get in bed, waiting for this dark, mysterious man to come inside so she can explore her repressed sexuality and join Dracula as one of his brides. Lucy smiles in evil, lustful delight as she awaits the Prince of Darkness to come liberate her. Notice how Lucy is in light blue, denoting purity and virginity, yet we see she has been bitten by Dracula, so this dove is tainted by the bat. Dracula has tasted her blood and seduced her with his magic. Sex magic is a big thing in Thelma, the religion of Crowley, which greatly influenced the liberation movement in this film. Lucy seems aware that she is doing wrong by joining these darker forces, yet finds more freedom in them than the repressive ideology she was raised and lives in. In various forms of Satanism, Lucifer is believed to be the liberator, the one who brings Promethean fire to the soul, enlightenment and expansion of consciousness spiritually, physically, and sexually. So Lucy, abandoning the cross, that narrow path to salvation, awaits to be consumed by the Prince of Darkness, Satan, secularism, Dracula, what have you. Lucy caresses her bitten neck, eager for more enlightenment, eager to explore her sexuality. Lucy turns her head to look outside her window. Her eager, hungry eyes see that a strong gust of wind blows the fallen leaves near her window entrance. Lucy smiles as she awaits the king of all evil, Dracula. This scene is so Halloween for me. The VHS copy I have makes the leaves look orange, brown, and red. I love the fall season for its spooky season. All Hallows Eve, Halloween, and All Saints' Days are all celebrated during this mystical month. If you need a scary movie to watch on these days, then watch Horror of Dracula is all I'm saying. Now let's walk further here at the bottom of the lagoon. I want to show you that we can dive deeper and analyze more symbolism and ideology contained within the Horror of Dracula. Do you see that endless, black, bottomless pit at the bottom of the lagoon? Maybe Dagon or Cthulhu is there. Or perhaps we will find a portal to Dracula's castle. Let us dive into the dark ends of the lagoon. We cut from this spooky scene to Victor Von Helsing listening to an audio playback of his own voice recording pertaining to the occult lore of the vampire, the dreaded Nosferatu. Victor Von Helsing is pacing around the room, listening to his voice, double-checking his own notes so he himself can prepare to vanquish the evil of Dracula. I often wonder if he made these audio recordings to assist other occult investigators and vampire hunters just in case he fails. Peter Cushing is amazing in this scene. He has the astuteness of a teacher, of a kind priest who is eager to vanquish evil in the name of all that is holy. Victor Von Helsing sits down with his notebook and begins to pen further information pertaining to vampires. We hear his voice speak on vampires, not being able to go out into the sunlight. Dr. Von Helsing says that vampires fear light. These creatures of darkness can never venture forth in daylight, and that sunlight is fatal to them. Let us discuss why this is. Come and dive deeper with me. Vampire, Strigoi, Nosferatu, vampires, whatever you want to call them, all have various folklore and ideology about them. Some are very different than others, but most sharing common ground. This film, The Horror of Dracula, really solidified the idea that vampires cannot come out in the daylight. This folklore, or rather the lore surrounding this film, is based within Catholicism. I would hint at a fun rabbit hole you can go on the real existence of vampires, or rather what certain priests and bishops of the Catholic Church encountered in ancient history with said vampires based upon their own letters and diaries. Did the Church, with all of its power and influence, remove the belief and existence of vampires from history? Probably not. But if you want to look hard enough and question everything, you may find some interesting there. Unless you want to think you know everything about our bizarre, cruel world. Perhaps vampires are there, or are symbolic for what happens when humanity forgets God. Either way, maybe vampires within the Christian worldview mean something to its adherents that non-believers may not see or understand, thinking it all hocus-pocus bullshit. Vampires cannot go out in the sunlight. Strange, seeing as the light the moon gives off is merely a reflection of the sun's light. Or is it? It is rather dishonest to claim that the moon gives off the same light of the sun, therefore, gotcha vampires can't be real. It is intellectually dishonest to say that the same photon rays, or rather the exact same light as the sun, is reflected by the moon. Though the moon contains the same colors as sunlight, the intensity of each color varies, meaning the moon's surface reflects some of the wavelengths more strongly than others. For example, the moon reflects longer wavelengths, redder colors, more effectively than the shorter wavelengths, bluer colors. So already this boring science reflects the mythical colors of red being Satan, stronger, and God, weaker, being blue within the color spectrum of the moonlight. With all this fun science pertaining to the moon, perhaps there is also a more symbolic theological reason for the vampire's life cycle. Christians are known as the children of light, who worship in the early morning when the sun is at its zenith. Their texts claim that their God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. 1 John 1:5 says, God is light. This implies that God is free from all darkness, evil, or deceit, the true enlightenment. This concept is further explored within the Bible of God being a metaphor of light. God is seen as the source of truth, holiness, and life, guiding believers and exposing what is falsehood. The vampire cannot come out during the day because its life cycle is the inverse of this. The vampire is darkness itself. The Nosferatu leads you into darkness, deceit, and evil. Catholics are tasked every Sunday at Mass to drink Jesus' blood, to eat his flesh even. The Greek word gnaw is used in the New Testament to describe the ritual of the Mass. Jesus says you must eat his flesh and drink his blood to have life. If you do not do this, you cannot enter into eternal life and go to heaven. This is the entire point of the Christian Sabbath of the Mass. Vampires must eat and gnaw the flesh and drink the blood of those that walk in the day to have eternal life. The parallels are there, and some occult sects even teach that Cain, the brother of Abel, was the first vampire. Victor von Helsing writes further in his book, Listening to His Voice Recording of the Lore on Vampires. Dr. von Helsing mentions how wood destroys them. Let's dive deeper and explore why wood destroys vampires. Jesus was hanged on a wooden cross, and the most obvious cause. However, let's dive and look deeper. Wood harms vampires because it is associated with life and nature, which can disrupt the unnatural state of a vampire. Wood in various cultures in the world is associated with life, growth, and nature, which would naturally be opposed to the undead nature of vampires. In Eastern European folklore, where a majority of vampire myths originated, wooden stakes were used to pin down corpses, preventing them from rising as the infernal undead. In some more unique interpretations, wooden stakes, especially those made from certain types of wood like ash or hawthorn, can cause significant damage to a vampire's internal system, potentially leading them to bleed to death. Victor von Helsing's voice then concludes in his own voice message that the cross is effective against the vampire. Here we can see a deviation from the novel and why Christopher Lee had problems with this film not having a more Stoker rather than modern universalism or relativism and even Christian Science ideology within the film. The crucifix within Catholicism is said to be the most powerful against the vampire in almost all respectful lore besides a handful. This most sacred symbol of the Catholic faith is the ultimate repellent of the Nosferatu. Only the crucifix, not the basic cross that is found within Protestantism. Side note, I love that Stephen King even acknowledged this in his epic novel Salem's Lot, that the only cross that can truly repel the Nosferatu is that of the crucifix, or of the Pope cross, known historically as the Shepherd's Cross. I feel this adds to a certain level of horror that is known as Catholic horror within Dracula, and Prom Night 2 is known for being that as well. For the biblical Satan is legalistic and can only submit to the authority of the church that Jesus himself founded. Bram Stoker's novel also displays the same ideology of Salem's Lot. Dracula is only repelled by Catholic iconography rather than Protestant or Greek and Russian Orthodoxy. Jonathan Harker in the novel is a Protestant and is offered and is offended by the more traditional Christian sects, for he feels that the crucifix is idolatry, as is the belief of Mary conceived without sin, the Immaculate Conception, much like Adam and Eve, and the saints and angels praying and interceding for him. No film adaptation has adapted this properly, which makes sense because you want to make your movie universally marketable. However, Stoker in his novel doubles down that only Catholicism can truly save you from Satan and his Prince of Darkness, Dracula. Side note, we at the Lagoon welcome everyone of any religious disposition to come visit and relax at the Lagoon. I just feel it would be dishonest to not present the facts as they are. For example, the director of this film was raised from a Christian Science background, a faith I do not share and would be opposed to. So naturally, this film would have a more Christian Science worldview than Islamic or Jewish or the various pagan or secular dispositions. Let's swim on. Victor von Helsing remains in his room writing down notes and listening to his audio recording. Suddenly he is disturbed by a knock at the door. He invites the knocker in, finding it to be his manservant Porter. Porter has come in to answer his summons that apparently has happened off screen. Van Helsing gives him an urgent letter to deliver in the morning. Porter leaves Van Helsing to listen to his own notes. As Van Helsing listens to his notes, he makes a new audio recording pertaining to vampirism. Van Helsing states that vampirism is much like a drug addict, that the vampire hates having to feast on blood but cannot resist the urge to feast and drink the blood of their victims, that if they don't feast, they remain undead. Victor seems determined even more now to end the evil of Dracula. Meanwhile, Dracula has come to feast and teach Lucy all the things of the dark. Dracula feasts on her innocence and drinks deeply of her blood, much to Lucy's pleasure. Dr. Stewart pays a visit to check on Lucy and says she merely has anemia, that nothing supernatural is at play here. Unsatisfied with this information, Miss Holmwood goes to pay Van Helsing a visit. It is here that the plot moves forward. Side note, I love Van Helsing's chair. It always makes me want to enjoy peppermint. Let's swim on. Van Helsing shows up and tells the Holmwoods how it is. We see that Lucy knows that her fiancé Jonathan is dead. I feel that Peter Cushing's performance in this scene is beyond greatness. You can see that he knows that somehow Dracula has influenced Lucy. He gives off such a kind, charming persona. He doubles down on kindness and does everything in his power to comfort Lucy and the rest of the Holmwoods. Dr. Van Helsing instructs Mrs. Holmwood to leave the window shut and overfill the room with garlic. Victor persuades her arguments by saying, "You wanted a second opinion, so listen to me." As usual with a horror movie, things go wrong. Lucy begins to get angry at all the garlic. Perhaps she is really allergic, but we know that it is evil at play. Lucy screams for the garlic flowers to be removed so the Prince of Darkness may come in and love her once more. As Peter still says, "I love you to death," Lucy has died, for her faithful trusting maid removed the garlic flowers, sealing her fate. Van Helsing in sorrow sees that Lucy is dead. The maid admits to disobeying his orders, sealing Lucy's doom. The Holmwood in grief project their sorrow onto Van Helsing, who now gives Jonathan's diary to Arthur. It is now time for Michael Gow to shine in his illustrious performance as Arthur Holmwood. It's clear that the diary has been read off screen. Such a fantastic tale would be hard for anyone to believe, but little Tiana comes in fear and sadness about how Aunt Lucy appeared to her. Arthur, not wanting to accept the horrific truth, sets out to meet the vampire. Arthur sees that Lucy's grave is empty. Lucy is very much alive, or rather undead, the dreaded Nosferatu. Lucy is about to devour the innocent Tiana, yet good prevails. In this iconic scene from Hammer, Lucy is about to devour Arthur, but is stopped by Van Helsing. Holding his blessed crucifix in hand, he holds back the evil vampire. He quickly places the crucifix upon Lucy's head, burning her with the cross. Lucy screams in horror as the sacramental burns her. She flees in terror, leaving Van Helsing with Arthur and little Tiana. This scene would go on to inspire so many other vampire films. In the next decade, even inspiring films today. It is here, over Lucy's undead body within her crypt, that Arthur now accepts the truth of the vampire and the events that have transpired to his family. Van Helsing and Arthur Holmwood now join forces to end the horror of Dracula. Arthur Holmwood, looking to Von Helsing as leader, follows him into Lucy's crypt and watches him in Lucy's suffering. He hides in horror as Von Helsing stakes her in her heart. He grabs his own heart in pain as it breaks hearing Lucy's screams. He turns away, not able to witness the gore. Von Helsing, in great confidence and bravery, drives the stake deeper into Lucy's heart, freeing her from the curse of the vampire. Arthur comes to see the work that Von Helsing has done. To his amazement, he sees that Lucy looks to be saved. Her corpse looks to be human and pure once more. The curse of the vampire is gone. It is here that Arthur knows he must learn more and become a disciple of Von Helsing so that they can end the tyranny of Dracula. The next few scenes show Von Helsing teaching Arthur the truth about the vampire, preparing him to face off the ultimate evil, the Prince of Darkness himself, Dracula. Von Helsing gives Arthur a glass of brandy as they discuss the lore on the vampire and formulate a plan to end this hellish nightmare once and for all. Dr. Von Helsing explains to Arthur that Dracula must have native soil with him, that he saw his coffin leave when he was at Castle Dracula, that it must be here somewhere. They can go check the records and perhaps figure out where the beast is residing and do what needs to be done. In this charming scene, we get to see the frontier official who is played by Miles Malleson. He gives a humorous, fun performance and adds the only real silliness of the film. The chemistry these actors have with each other shines in this fun scene of them trying to find the hiding place of Dracula. The frontier official informs them that what they're seeking is against regulations. As the official goes on about law, regulations, and the properness of business, Arthur playfully takes out a bill and places it down, attempting to bribe the official. It seems to be working. This entire scene captures the fun of Hammer horror. Great acting with great sets and playful fun with a horrific Gothic tale. This scene always brings a smile to my face as I watch these masterful actors perfect their craft as they move the plot forward. Arthur places another bill, conceding the official to give them the information they desire. The place where Dracula coffin has arrived is the same place that Mina has been tricked into going. Mina has found herself in Dracula's new lair, and most definitely had herself a sexually charged night with much biting and blood drinking. Mina returns home to see that Arthur and Von Helsing are waiting for her. She smiles, and her face reveals a night of wanton's pleasure and lusciousness. Mina Holmwood is perfectly played by Melissa Stribling. Melissa was a Scottish film and television actress. She is best known for her role in Dracula, but has appeared in Paris by Night, The Persuaders, and The Dick Ermey Show. Mina, like in many of the movie adaptations of Dracula, finds herself the victim of Dracula. Melissa's performance with Christopher Lee is an erotically charged performance. Dracula and Mina showing sexual pleasure in this manner has often been described as a first in British cinema. Terence Fisher remembered her asking him how to play the scene. Mr. Fisher replied by saying that she should imagine that she had one whale of a sexual night, and that it should show on her face. Fisher said that she produced a satisfied little facial expression that spoke volumes. Melissa has been praised for being a terrific female lead throughout the film, and it would be a disservice if we here at the Lagoon did not mention her iconic performance. Mina comforts Arthur and Von Helsing, who are now on their way to find Dracula's coffin. Much to their dismay, they do not find it. They are led by a dapper man who gives a fun, quirky performance. The Undertaker is played by Miles Malleson, who also appears in The Hounds of the Bakersfield, The Brides of Dracula, and The Phantom of the Opera. All done by Hammer Horror. He gives them a tour of the area, and much to our hero's dismay, they are left empty with the coffin of Dracula missing. The Undertaker is even confused about the missing coffin. The plot thickens. Arthur and Von Helsing are with Mina once more, who looks to be in delight with her new lover Dracula. She overhears the boys discussing the possibility of where the coffin could be. They mention an old neglected graveyard that is abandoned enough to house the coffin. Mina ponders on their mysterious conversation, but is quickly persuaded to mind her own business. As Von Helsing and Arthur pore over maps trying to find their prize, Mina knits on. Arthur goes to Mina and tries to give her the cross, but Mina tries to hide her revulsion. She takes it, but then faints and falls down in pain at holding the Holy Cross. Even Von Helsing quickly comes to Mina's aid. Arthur and Von Helsing see that the cross has burned Mina's hand. Dracula has striked again. Mr. Steal Your Girl in the house. Von Helsing confronts Arthur, reminding him that God is on their side, and with his help, they will end this evil. Arthur, angrily at Dracula, has afflicted his precious Mina, takes the cross and puts his faith in God above. Night falls, and Van Helsing and Arthur move to patrol the mansion ground to protect Mina from Dracula. In this iconic scene with the children of the night howling, making their music, Arthur and Van Helsing confidently walk the grounds, aiming to catch the vampire in his evil deeds. Meanwhile, Mina is walking about in her Gothic mansion, eagerly awaiting Dracula. She opens the door to find him standing there, waiting to feast on her. Dracula comes into the room and leads her to bed. Mina looks sexually excited as Dracula begins to feast on her milky white neck. This scene is then interrupted by the screeching of an owl. Arthur looks into Mina's window, wondering if she is safe. Van Helsing and Arthur return back inside the Homewood estate, confident that Mina is safe from Dracula. Much to Arthur's dismay, he finds Mina almost drained of blood. Blood pours out profusely from her neck. Van Helsing assists Arthur in a blood transfusion, aiming to restore the lost blood. Dr. Van Helsing recommends Arthur push fluids to restore his health. He recommends wine over tea and water, making him my favorite doctor in cinema, but that's neither here nor there. After attending Mina, they begin to wonder how Dracula was given dominion within the house. Perhaps Van Helsing is wrong about vampires being able to turn into bats and wolves. Van Helsing knows he is not wrong, so something must be at play here. Greta the maid gives some advice and slips up and says that she was forbidden to go down into the cellar. Van Helsing gets up at once, realizing what has happened. Herein lies one of the coolest scenes in the movie. Van Helsing goes into the cellar to find Dracula's coffin. It's empty. Before he can react, Dracula comes in like the demonic creature he is, snarling at Van Helsing. Van Helsing quickly goes to confront Dracula, but turns back to the coffin to place his crucifix and rosary into it, preventing Dracula from ever getting back into it. Van Helsing returns to the door, finding it locked by Dracula himself. He bangs on the door, calling for Mr. Homewood. The musical score blares on, adding great tension in this iconic scene. Arthur opens the door, and Van Helsing runs to find Dracula. He's only met with Greta's screams and despondency. Van Helsing slaps her back into reality, as anyone should do in such an instance. He demands to know what happens. Greta reveals the dreaded truth on Dracula to our heroes. The boys pull up in carriage and see that the coachman is dead. They begin to follow Dracula's trail, piecing together the wicked vampire's plans and movements. Arthur, worried about Mina, realizes that if they don't stop the Prince of Darkness, she will be lost to evil forever. Dracula rides out on his carriage, eager to return to his castle. It is here we get another fun scene with the frontier official, as Dracula cares not for road signs or gates. Dracula crashes into the road blockage, damaging the roadblock, leaving the official to fix it. The official, coughing, fixes the roadblock once more, thinking his hard work has paid off. He hears sounds of another carriage. This time, Arthur and Van Helsing have no time for proper road decency. They crash into it as well, destroying it like Dracula did before them. The frontier official screams, wailing his curses into the cold night. This fun, playful scene adds much humor to an overall darker film adaptation of Dracula. It's sure to bring a smile to even the evilest of vampires. I like to think that he was out there for hours fixing it and thinking, finally, I'm done, I can go back to bed, and then here comes our heroes, Arthur and Dr. Van Helsing, to ruin his hard work. Such a great scene. But let's swim on. Our hero's carriage catches up to Dracula's castle. Here we see Dracula with his fateful shovel. He has dug a grave to hide Mina in. He is eager for his new bride. He himself knows he has just enough time to bury her and take refuge within his own accursed soil. Dracula picks up Mina, giving us the classic monster holding the maiden scene. He throws her in the grave without caring about hurting his new bride. He then begins to bury her, eagerly to take his revenge on the Homewoods. Dracula pours his accursed soil upon Mina, waking her up. She screams in horror at Dracula, who hisses at her. Alas, our heroes pull up to confront the ultimate evil. Arthur sees Dracula trying to bury Mina. Van Helsing halts the carriage, and our heroes quickly get off to confront Dracula. Arthur goes to Mina to save her from this horrific calamity that has befallen her. Van Helsing, determined to stop Dracula, pursues him into his infernal castle. Here we get the most iconic scene in all of 50s horror. Van Helsing follows Dracula into his Gothic castle to confront the ultimate evil. Dracula bursts into his castle, quickly heading up the stairs. He is followed by Van Helsing, who matches Dracula's every step. Van Helsing almost loses Dracula, but realizes that Dracula flew into the dining hall. Von Helsing runs in and is met with the giant globe and checkered pavement that houses the astral zodiac signs. The illustrious tables that hint of a brighter time fill the room. Von Helsing looks around for his arch foe. Dracula picks up a big candlestick and throws it at Van Helsing. Before Von Helsing recovers, Dracula has grabbed him by the throat. He forces Dr. Helsing onto the floor, snarling, showing his fangs. It is here we get the most iconic fight between these two characters in all of cinema. Dracula looks evilly at Von Helsing as he strangles him, attempting to snuff him out. Von Helsing wisely plays dead in hopes of tricking the Prince of Darkness. It seems to work, for Dracula smiles, overconfident in his evil power. He goes to feast on Von Helsing, but empowered by God himself, Von Helsing throws off Dracula. Von Helsing gets up, eager to confront and continue the fight. Dracula readies himself, awaiting his foe's next move. Von Helsing scopes out the room and sees that large curtains hide the sun's harmful rays from caressing the room. Dracula slowly approaches Von Helsing, ready to kill him and feast on his holy blood. Von Helsing quickly jumps on the dining room table and pulls down the curtains, causing the sun to shine brightly on Dracula. Let us now rest our feet here at the very bottom of the lagoon, for we can go no deeper. I have for you one more fun fact about the horror of Dracula. Peter Cushing was known for his physical commitment to his various roles. At age 45, Cushing did most of his stunts, including this epic table jump and this epic final showdown with Dracula. In one take of this fight, Peter sprained his ankle but kept filming, hiding the limp like a pro. His athleticism surprised the crew, who nicknamed him the Leaping Professor. I hope this information only adds to the epicness of this scene. Now let us finish our deep dive into the horror of Dracula. Dracula falls down onto the floor, screaming in pain and horror as the sun shines down upon his evilness. It begins to turn him into dust. His foot gets caught into the sun's harmful rays. He tries to recover, but Von Helsing is too fast. He grabs the candlesticks and makes them into the shape of the Holy Cross. He holds them out to Dracula, forcing him back into the sunlight. Dracula screams in horror as his hand is reduced to dust. Von Helsing remains strong in this gruesome event. He places the cross further before Dracula, causing him to fall further back into the sunlight, being reduced to dust. In this epic finale, Dracula tries to cover his face with his only remaining hand. Dracula is quickly turned to ash. By today's standard, these are cheesy effects. However, this end scene is what garnered Horror of Dracula to receive an X rating, as well as its sexual undertones. All of this is very tame by today's standards, but nevertheless, without this film we would not have the modern films we have today. Dracula struggles to remain alive. Evil always tries to find a way. However, evil is no match for good, and the sun's warming rays reduce Dracula to ash. We cut back to Mina and Arthur. The curse of Dracula leaves Mina as we see the burnt mark that the Holy Cross gave her dissipates. Arthur kisses her hand, giving private thanks to God. The Holmwoods then turn their eyes to Dracula's castle with a smile, knowing that Von Helsing has been successful in ending the horror of Dracula. Von Helsing has opened the window door, allowing the wind to come in and blow away the evil dust of Dracula's remains. Von Helsing stands over Dracula's fallen corpse and watches as the wind blows the dust of evil from the zodiac sign of Aquarius. The only thing that remains in the ring of the dragon, the Prince of Darkness, Dracula's ring. The credits roll as we see the remaining dust blow forth, ushering us into the age of Aquarius. I very much hope you have enjoyed this deep dive of the horror of Dracula. We are at the very bottom of the lagoon, and I think it's time we swim back up and enjoy the rest of the day. I want to thank you all for your patience in waiting for this video to drop. I hope the wait was worth it. I have many more deep dives coming your way, so don't feel like this is our only time swimming at the lagoon together. Dracula is one of my favorite villains and characters in all of literature, so it has been an honor to bring you this deep dive. I hope I was able to shed new light upon this masterpiece, this solidified classic in horror. Maybe when you watch it again you will see things you never saw before, and realize that there is very much deeper meanings behind every shot. Stay tuned for the next deep dive on the channel. I will go ahead and let you know it will be the creature from the Black Lagoon. So until we swim again in deep dive here at the lagoon, stay salty and always stay spooky. Happy Halloween. Every day is Halloween here at the lagoon. Until next time, bye-bye. And don't forget to keep the garlic out, for you never know. Maybe the Prince of Darkness is out there waiting to meet you. Dracula lives.